Hi there, this is Joe from ShopTo, and this is our Rise of the Tomb Raider review. Once again, I'm joined by Dan.
Hello.
I've got quite a lot to say about it, so let's get started.
Well, firstly then, does it sort of rival previous Tomb Raider games?
I'd say it's very similar to the last Tomb Raider game. Forget the ones before it, we can kind of think of our comparisons to them in a second, but it's very similar to the last one. In fact, there was one point I actually got deja vu, and I had to go into the menu just to make sure I wasn't playing the last one. I honestly did that, because there was this one section where I think you had to fire your arrow to pull the rope down, and I was just like, I really thought I'd played it before, that one section, and I had to check. I was like, oh man, but yeah, so apart from that, yeah, it's different. So let's start from the beginning. The game, you're basically after finding out the secret to immortality, basically. And you've got this group called Trinity, who are obviously out to stop you. So, yeah, there's a lot of gunfighting, shall we say. But the game basically starts off in this icy sort of mountain. And it looks quite spectacular, very sort of jaw-dropping graphics to begin with, and then you go along, and obviously things happen, avalanches, whatever, and you're falling off cliffs, and then you're climbing up the cliffs, and you're thinking, have I seen this somewhere before? And it just kind of reminds you of the Uncharted game. Remember the beginning of the Uncharted game?
Well, also, I think that sounds like what they were playing for the E3 adverts and stuff, wasn't it, as well, by the sound of it?
Yeah, so
yeah, that's a danger sometimes. Familiarity of certain scenes kind of does make you think, I've done this before.
Yeah, at the very beginning, it was very Uncharted. But the story at the beginning is very strong too. There's a lot of background about her and her father, and it really drags you in, and you're thinking, this game's brilliant. But as slowly as it goes on and on and on, that kind of loses sight of the story, and it feels kind of stretched out, and you think to yourself, I just wish the story was, because the story's very long, it must be hours and hours, and it feels almost like it's been just pulled and stretched so far to make...
For a game of that nature, they have to, so you think all the action in between, it's going to be a point where the story gets sidelined for like half hour or so whilst you solve a puzzle or something.
The thing is, the game doesn't really, to me, the game doesn't really know what it wants to be. So you've got this Uncharted style story adventure, which is brilliant in its own right, don't get me wrong, but then on the other hand, you've got the ability to explore tombs and run about and find campfire wood and make poison arrows so you can shoot down a bear and stuff like that. So
the whole premise of like the Rise of the Tomb Raider tagline, does that mean you're starting from scratch all over again and slowly building up the character of Lara?
Yeah, that's right. And so you've got all your crafting where you can make bows and you can make new arrows and make modifications to your weapons, give her skills and make her stronger and better. But like I say, getting back to what I'm saying about the game sort of not really knowing what it is, the problem I find is, you know what Uncharted is like, you've got a story, it gives no apologies for what it is, you've got a story, you're in gunfights, you're solving puzzles, but it's always flowing, isn't it? From one end to the other. That's when you're finished it, you're sitting there and you're thinking, wow, that was a game, aren't you? Because
the ones that I liked anyway,
because it goes from one end to the other non-stop. That's what's brilliant about it. But Tomb Raider's problem is it tries to do that, but then you're sort of running from one end of the story to the other, so someone's going, oh no, help the villagers, so you're thinking, right, I'm going to help the villagers, but then this little message will pop up saying optional tomb nearby, so you could therefore go off and explore that tomb. And you're thinking to yourself, well, this is great, I'm really enjoying exploring this tomb, but I've kind of forgot about these villagers that were in urgent need of assistance. Do you know what I mean?
I think that's what it sounds like. Because when we were talking about the previews, you mentioned there's like large hub areas where there's so much to do.
Yeah.
And I think by the sound of it, there's two ways of playing the game. There is the tomb raiding style, which we all know and love now, but they've also have a more linear story side of things. So,
but there's
by the sound of it, it's going to be multiple playthroughs involved here, isn't it? One being the story, and then the other being the tombs.
Yeah, there's also like little side quests you can do for people as well. So it just kind of feels like it's a third-person action-adventure story, but it's also kind of RPG-ish as well. And it just... That's what... I don't really like that. I wish they'd just kind of left the story, to be honest. I mean, like I say, the story starts off strong and it goes into our background about our father and stuff, and you're thinking, yeah, this is going to be really good. But then, as I mentioned, it gets lost. And
I mean, you seem hung up about the story, saying it's not great, but in the end, sometimes, I mean, some of these Tomb Raider games in the past have been pretty poor story-wise, but how does the actual gameplay and the action hold out?
Oh, I mean, it's really good. I mean, the controls are a bit wonky. I let Jordan have a go, my son, just to say to him, because he plays games a lot. I said, do these controls feel odd to you? And he agreed with me that it just doesn't feel right, the shooting. But I think the part where you're fighting against Trinity and stuff now, when you're the sort of third person shooting behind cover, there's some clever parts to that. Like, you can find bottles and you can make them into Molotov cocktails and throw them at the enemy, or you can find these cans or bottles lying about and throw them and do poison gas and kind of do shrapnel grenades, which you actually craft on the go straight away. So I mean, stuff like that's really clever. And also,
even the shooting in all the other Tomb Raider games was a bit sort of laborious and painstakingly hard sometimes. But what about the actual tombs themselves? I mean, the adventure. I mean, how do they work?
See, this is the part that's absolutely brilliant. This is what the game should be. Because basically they've copied Uncharted, so forget copying Uncharted, forget doing the story and the shooting against Trinity or whatever. I mean, that part, I'm not saying it's terrible. I mean, it's still good, but it's basically just kind of lost in the fact that there's this other open world. You're always going to compare that to
Uncharted, aren't you? Because that's a game that's done it so well in the past.
You can't help it, but even if you weren't comparing it to Uncharted, it doesn't flow enough, because you've got this open world where you can run around and explore, and that's where the real fun is. So, like I say, this other part's just kind of like a distraction. And once you're kind of wandering around and doing the things that Tomb Raider does, because let's face it, that's what Tomb Raider was from the start, when you're wandering about exploring tombs and stuff and solving puzzles, is it not?
Yeah.
I mean, that's what Tomb Raider's really about, so why bother with the other part? I mean, I'm sure people love it, don't get me wrong, but I think the tombs, I think there needs to be more of that.
So do you think, is there a good balance of the puzzles, like lots of platforming and then shooting rope arrows and things like that? Is there more of that again?
Oh yeah, I love it. I mean, a lot of that comes into it just as you're exploring the open world. You've got these sort of rope things you can sort of fire at things and then pull them and make things turn round or break doors, and there's all sorts of things, and you can swing. And then some of the mechanics I like is, when you're running along platform, you jump, you can fire your rope like a sort of grapple hook and then swing across.
They've been using. I mean, I think is it Crystal Dynamics? I think that's the company
that's right. Yeah.
I mean, when they brought out their first version of Lara, that was their first introduction to that mechanic, and that was brilliant. And I'm glad they stuck to it, because it is a great addition to Lara Croft. I sort of associate that grapple hook now with Lara and her dual pistols, which is a great feat for them.
There's some really clever things in it. And you can fit against bears and wolves. And
good old Lara, shoot a bear, why not?
I mean, you do, going back to the story, you do got these sort of set piece moments which are kind of quite spectacular, but again, you know where they've got the idea from, do you know what I mean? So
does it cut away sometimes to like a quick time events again like they have in the past, or do they exist anymore?
There's a few when you're fighting against animals, from what I remember, but there's not really too many of them. It's very action orientated, but definitely my favourite part of the game is the tombs and exploring it. I just wish the game was more of that and less of the fighting against Trinity and soldiers.
How does this? I mean, the open world thing really is a surprise to me. How does that work? I mean, is it like one map and you wander around, or is there lots of other maps?
There's different areas you see, and because obviously, and you keep finding campsites as you go throughout your adventure, And then from these campsites you can fast travel. So if you've found a tomb in one area, you can then go back to a camp and just fast travel to another. So even if you go through the whole story, which is quite a long story, I mean it does take a while, so once you go through that, the game's not over. That's what's good about it, because you'll then be able to go and explore all these tombs if you've not done it already. So yeah, I mean it's a great game, like I say. In my personal opinion, I think this should have just left the story and concentrated more on the exploring and the tombs. I mean, I'd even sorry, I was going to say I'd even love to just see a Tomb Raider without all these enemies and gun shooting. I remember the old Tomb Raiders, they didn't have many enemies, did they?
The first few, no.
And I thought that was great. I'd rather just wander around, solve puzzles, fight a few animals, whatever. I mean, you can still make it spectacular, can't you?
Yeah, I mean, I'm liking the idea that you say you can just get through the story. All right, it's a bit of a quickly forgotten kind of plot device, but at the same time, get through that, and then you can go back and enjoy the game for what it is. But what you're saying there is it's actually a solid game. It's really enjoyable.
Oh, it's very solid. Just
don't get excited about the story. You know?
Yeah, I do think the story's a bit silly, and I do think it gets lost a bit when you're wondering about this exploring tombs and stuff like that. It just doesn't flow enough, so it's not something that's going to have your jaw on the floor by the end of it, because you'll forgot all about it because you've been too busy exploring. So yeah.
And the good thing is, at the moment, Xbox One players, it's an exclusive release for a while, isn't it? Yeah,
it's out in PC early next year, but it's not out PS4 for another year or something. So I mean, if you've got a bit of spare cash, then order it from ShopTo, because you won't regret it. You really won't. It is a great game. Thanks for joining us. Please don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
Living in isolation for decades.